What's up? It's Paul from Guitar World, and in this video, I will be going over the parts of an electric guitar. Basically, the anatomy of an electric guitar. Now, as you can see, I'm surrounded by a wealth of electric guitars that essentially all do the same thing, but the truth is, each one of these guitars is unique and different in what they can do, which is also a reason why when people say, why do guitarists have so many guitars? Well, this is the answer. They all do the same thing, but they have their own unique character, which is why we love electric guitars. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the parts of each of these guitars and show you why they do what they do. And obviously, if you're an experienced player, you already know all this. But for those who are just starting out on guitar, beginners, or people who know nothing about guitar, you'll have a better understanding of what an electric guitar does, and you'll be able to tell me or tell your friends what each part does and impress them. So let's get to it. Let's begin with the guitar that I'm holding. This here is a Fender Telecaster. Now, the Fender Telecaster is one of the very first electric solid bodies introduced into the world in the early 50s. The Telecaster has always remained in fashion and never goes out of style. Its popularity and relevancy has never waned. The one thing you can say about a Telecaster, of course, is that it looks pretty basic, but you'd be wrong because there's an elegance to its simplicity and is a reason why there's so many players who just continually play Telecasters, because it's the purest form of an electric guitar. It's simple, but you can coax so many different sounds from this particular guitar. But aside from all that, let's talk about the obvious parts of a guitar, which can be broken down to the body, the neck, and the headstock. Obviously, the headstock is one of the most defining characteristics of a guitar. And of course, for many brands, that is usually their signature. By just looking at a headstock, you'll be able to pretty much identify most guitars just by seeing the headstock. Moving over to the body of the guitar, on this Telecaster, you have the main tone wood body over here, and this one is probably made of ash, but other guitar bodies are generally made from alder, mahogany, ash, and then in some cases maple, and in other cases a lot of exotic woods or variations of the same woods I just mentioned, and of course composite materials like carbon fiber, for example. Some guitars tend to put on a pick guard, which is what this is over here, basically a cosmetic element of the guitar. Now, in the case of a Telecaster, this particular guitar, the strings go through the body. So we call that a string through body. So where the strings enter through these little string ferrules over here, they go through and pop out from the bridge, which happens to be an ashtray bridge, which is inherent to a Telecaster. They come out and then they rest on a bridge saddle, and these are the bridge saddles right over here. These bridge saddles can be moved forward or backward, which facilitates intonation, which roughly translates to keeping the particular string in perfect tune. Over here, these are the pickups, and over here, this is the control panel to the pickups. The pickup is basically a magnet that translates the vibrations and sound of the strings, which sends that harmonic information to an amplifier. This is called the bridge pickup. And this is called the neck pickup because of its proximity to the neck. Over here, this is the volume control, or more aptly, it's an output control, which regulates the amount of output or volume to the pickups. Now, this is a single volume, so this volume controls both pickups. And then over here is a tone control, which basically regulates the high end or reduces the high end. Over here, this is called the pickup selector. All the way to the end means that the bridge pickup is active only. If I notch it in the middle, that means the bridge pickup and the neck pickup are now active. So I get a combination of these two pickups together. And if I move it in its final position, it's only the neck. So I only activate the neck. So between those three variations on this three-way pickup selector, I can get three different tonal variations. And if you're really good, using the tone control, and what you come up with, a lot more. Where the pickups are placed changes the overall sound or tone of the guitar. When you have a pickup that's in the bridge position or in the rear position, they tend to sound brighter. And as you move it closer to the neck, the sound becomes a little darker and warmer. So you basically get the idea. So for example, if I'm to play, take a listen to just this pickup, you'll hear it's pretty bright. And if I shift it over to the neck pickup, it starts to become a little more darker sounding. So you hear the variation, and then having both pickups gets a combination of both. And then, of course, the tone control, as I mentioned, just basically cuts the high end from the signal. The volume is more output. So all the way up, you get the full output of the pickup. And as you go down, it starts to decrease in output. Here is the output jack. This is where you plug in an instrument cable from your amplifier to emit the sound of your guitar. Over here, these are the strap buttons or strap pins, which hold your strap so you can play standing up. The neck is secured to the body via 4 screws, hence it's why it's called a bolt-on. Usually Fender guitars like this, like a Telecaster or a Stratocaster, are generally bolt-on guitars. Not all of them, but generally. This happens to be a full maple neck. Generally, a neck usually has a fingerboard, but since this is an all maple neck, the neck is integrated to the fingerboard. So the fingerboard is part of the neck altogether. And over here we have frets. And in this case, because it's a Fender guitar, this has 21 frets. Most guitars generally have 22, like this guitar over here, like a Les Paul. But Fender's design was 21 frets. Frets are basically strips of metal wire that are crowned and leveled, and they allow you to easily locate the notes. Now, obviously, when you think of like classical instruments, they are generally fretless. So you have to kind of know where the notes are. But having frets allow you to rest on a note. So for example, over here, this would be a G note. And then moving down, this is an F sharp note, which is a half step down from the G, and then moving over to the F. So they're basically indicators, much like the inlays, allowing you to know where to fret and find the notes that allow you to make chords and make music for that matter. Over here in the middle, these are inlays. Now, many guitars have different types of inlays, but this is the most basic inlay. These are what we call dot inlays, indicating fret position. So obviously 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9, 12, and upwards. Over here, another part of the neck is the nut. This is where the strings, when they travel from the bridge saddle, they rest on the guitar nut. These are generally made of bone or some synthetic material that resembles bone. The other part of the neck that you don't necessarily see but is important to the neck is the truss rod, which is underneath the fingerboard inside the neck. Now, the truss rod basically regulates the amount of curvature or bow to the neck. Sometimes necks tend to shift with temperature changes because they're made of wood, so they tend to bow, and the truss rod relieves that. So it allows you to straighten the neck, so it makes it easier to play. Moving over to the top of this particular guitar, you'll notice we have the tuners, which includes the tuning posts and then the tuning gears or the tuning keys, if you will. This is where you put the string, you wind it and tighten it up to pitch. The one thing that's cool about a bolt-on neck, because of, again, it's a modular design, is that say if for some reason I get tired of this neck or I don't like the way this neck is, I can always unbolt it and put on a new neck of my choice. Say if I don't want an all maple fingerboard, say I want to turn this guitar with a rosewood fingerboard and a maple neck, I can do so by simply removing a neck and adding a new neck on. Obviously that is costly, but thanks to the bolt-on modular design of, say, a Fender guitar, it allows you to do so. Moving on to the next guitar, this is an Epiphone Les Paul, which is obviously based on the Gibson Les Paul, one of the most popular electric guitar models. Now, this is called a single cutaway guitar, hence by its cutaway here at the bottom, its elegant cutaway here on the bottom. This particular guitar is what we call a set neck guitar, meaning the neck is glued into the body. So compared to the Telecaster, which has a bolt-on neck, this particular guitar has a set neck, which the neck is set into the body, glued together. Generally, a set neck guitar usually has more sustain due to the neck being glued to the body. So it's a more harmonious sort of joint, neck joint, compared to a bolt-on neck. Not to say one is better than the other. It's just that many players feel that having a set neck guitar offers a bit more sustain. This guitar has a 24 3/4 inch scale length, whereas the Fender has a 25.5 inch scale length. Scale length is the distance between the bridge to the nut. Having a longer scale length generally creates a brighter and snappier tone, which is generally why the Telecasters have that sort of a twangier sound. A Gibson, because it has a shorter scale length, usually has a warmer and rounder tone. And for some people, they find having a shorter scale length makes it easier to play. And obviously, because of the shorter scale length, the distance between each fret changes. It's so small that you may not notice, but in tone, you'll definitely hear a difference between, say, this type of guitar and that guitar. This sounds definitely a little bit warmer, a little bigger. And the other thing that makes it bigger sounding and warmer sounding is the fact that this type of guitar has humbucking pickups. Now, why are they called humbucking? Because that's exactly what they do. They basically take hum, which you generally hear in electric guitars, and they buck the hum. They cancel out the hum, which is why usually single coil guitars, which is what this Telecaster has, these are single coil guitars. It's not non-humbucking, just by their nature, generally introduce what they call 60 cycle hum. They are non-humbucking pickups. But these are humbucking pickups. These generally have a little more output, sound warmer, sound fuller, a little rounder. You can hear on the bridge pickup, has that real full sound. Even on the neck. The pickup selector is up here as opposed to down here where you'll find that on a Telecaster. Some people really like having the pickup selector. It allows you to, as you're playing, to quickly flip up or flip down to change pickup positions, from bridge to neck or in between, simply by your right hand strumming. Other people may find that this gets in the way if they're a hard strummer, but love it or hate it, this is where the pickup selector is, and I love it. The control set is different from, say, the Telecaster. Each of these pickups has its own set of volume and tone knobs. This is the volume and the tone knob that is specific to this pickup. While the rhythm pickup or the neck pickup, this volume and this tone is specific only to that pickup. By playing around with the outputs of both volume knobs, you can get a wide range of tone, and even using the tone controls as well, you can get a wide range of tones when you have both pickups activated. A lot of famous guitar players stick in the middle position and played with the controls to get a whole wide range of tones by simply mixing and matching the output and tones from both pickups. Guitars of this style generally have a mahogany body, and what makes it different is there's usually, as you can see up here, a maple cap. Now this one happens to have a maple veneer, but on a Gibson style guitar, they usually put a maple cap on top of this mahogany body, and then you'll see it is outlined by what they call binding. the binding adds sort of an elegant cosmetic appearance or an aesthetic to this particular guitar, which is why so many guitar players really love the Les Paul, because it's just a beautiful looking guitar. The other thing about the Les Paul is the bridge and the stop bar tailpiece. So the strings go through the stop bar tailpiece over here. These are the stop bar posts. They go through the tailpiece and then rest on the bridge, which is right over here. So this whole section, this hardware part, is called a tunematic bridge. You can basically set how high or how low your action can be simply by rotating these little wheels underneath the tunematic bridge. When we talk about action, it's basically finding a proper balance of how high the strings should be in relation to the fretboard so that you eliminate any fret noise or buzz on a guitar, and of course, allowing your guitar to play easily. The other thing about Les Paul is you'll notice the tuning gears are on a 3-and-3 fashion. So we tend to call this a 3-and-3 on a side, whereas on a Fender Telecaster, it's 6 in line. The top 3 over here tune the lower bass strings, and the bottom 3 tune the higher treble strings. Moving on from the Les Paul and from the Telecaster, we have what is known as the Stratocaster. This arrived as an electric solid body shortly after the Telecaster. When you look at the Stratocaster, it seems you look at it and you notice the control configuration is much different than, say, the Telecaster or the Les Paul. Here we have 3 different pickups, and these are 3 single coil pickups like the Telecaster. But what's interesting about it is the variation in tones that you can get because of this configuration. And of course, the control set as well. This is a 5-way selector switch, pickup selector on a Stratocaster. All the way down tends to be just the bridge pickup over here, which is angled, which is what they did sort of get more of that trebly sound located near the bridge. Then when you move it 1 notch, what happens is now it introduces the middle pickup. So now it's a combination of the bridge and middle. And then when you move it to the middle notch, it's just the middle pickup. And then when you move it over to the next notch, it becomes the middle and a combination of the neck pickup. And then finally, in its 5th position, it's just the neck pickup. So an incredible variation of tones here. A lot of players love having the volume right here because just by where your hand rests near the bridge, you can use your pinky to kind of regulate the volume or the output of the pickups. So you have a real quick access to the volume, whereas on the Telecaster or on the Les Paul, you have to kind of break away from your picking hand to reach it. Some players don't find it to be a problem, other players do, but that's why each one of these guitars has its own particular characteristic that many players become comfortable with. Now, this is just one of those designs that works for a lot of players. The beauty of the Stratocaster is that because of its modular nature, it allows you to go in and rewire. It allows you to wire these pickups in any configuration or in a favored configuration that works for the player. In an original Stratocaster, generally the bridge pickup is full output. There's no tone control wired to this pickup. But a lot of players find the bridge pickup so harsh that they generally wire this particular tone control to that pickup to cut some of the high end, to regulate some of the high end of it. So that's just one of many variations of what you can do. Some players even love to put no tone control on the middle pickup and then just keep the other pickups that variation, so you get this full output out of the middle pickup. The other thing that's interesting about a Stratocaster, it's a string-through design where the strings go through a block that's located underneath here and comes out through the bridge saddles over here to rest on. This is commonly called a tremolo bridge, but a lot of players generally say that is the incorrect term. It's more a vibrato bridge, which is what this is. And this is what we call the vibrato arm or tremolo arm. This particular bridge is, again, another signature thing about a Stratocaster. It allows you to move the note, bend the note downwards or upwards with the bridge. Or, if you will, you can take whole chords and bend them down, which you can't necessarily do on a Telecaster or a Les Paul because these are fixed bridge designs. There's no movement. But with a Stratocaster bridge, there are springs that are holding the block, of the vibrato block or tremolo block, that allow you to move the bridge back and forth. So, for example, it allows me to change the pitch of the strings by going down or go up. And a lot of players who use Stratocasters tend to use the vibrato bridge to create that rising and falling sounds, especially like if you heard like Now, the problem with that, of course, is that these guitars don't have anything to keep those strings locked in place. So what happens by using this bridge, strings tend to go out of tune. But some players who know what they're doing are able to work with a vibrato bridge like this and still maintain tuning. The other distinct thing about this Stratocaster is you'll notice this particular one does have a maple neck, but it also has a rosewood fingerboard as opposed to a full maple fingerboard that's found on this Telecaster. A lot of guitarists tend to love rosewood fingerboards because it's a softer wood, generally has a warmer tone to it, as opposed to the bright nature of a full maple neck. On a Les Paul, they are generally rosewood fingerboards. Now, there are certain Gibson models that have ebony fingerboards, which is a darker wood, and also produces a brighter, snappier tone similar to maple. Moving over to this guitar, this happens to be a Paul Reed Smith guitar. This is an S2 standard, but it's very typical of a Paul Reed Smith design. It's a dual cutaway, set neck design. This one happens to have humbucking pickups in it, but what's interesting about this particular guitar is this one only has a single volume and a single tone control. And the way the pickups on this particular guitar are wired are done via the 5-way blade switch that's located over here. So in its final position, it's similar to the Stratocaster, where we have the full output of the humbucking pickup here. And then if I move it into the second notch position, the two coils that are found underneath these covers, they become split. So only one coil is active, which gives you a totally different tone, similar to, say, a Stratocaster's single coil design. So it splits the coils. And then if I move it to the next notch position, I get both pickups. And then the same idea works when I get to the next notch position. Here in the neck pickup, it splits the coil, so I get that one coil sound, which gives me sort of a brighter, more of a single coil sound. And then the last position, of course, is the full humbucking position. Everything is done by a simple one volume, one tone to regulate all the pickups as opposed to having a dual set like that. So it's a very simple design, and a lot of players tend to like that as well. As you can see, this guitar comes with 22 frets, and which is signature to Paul's guitars are the inlays, which are birds, which he calls bird inlays. This particular guitar also has a vibrato, similar to a Fender. However, this one is the same idea, string through the tremolo block, up through the saddles, and up here, these are locking posts. So with this particular vibrato system, you can go up and down, but the strings tend to stay in tune because of the locking posts. Speaking of locking tuners, this here is a Reverend. This is another guitar brand, which is, its setup is similar to, say, the Les Paul. You'll notice the same idea, same similar humbucking type of pickups. This one has a single volume, a single tone, and then a new type of knob, what they call a bass contour knob. What it does is it eliminates bass and allows you to shape the tone of the pickups that removes the bass so you get sort of a tighter sound. Same idea, 3-way pickup switch, same idea of a tunematic bridge. This particular guitar, since I mentioned locking, these are locking tuners. A lot of players tend to like the locking tuners so it keeps the strings in tune, and it makes string changing very easy by simply stringing the string through the post, locking it down via the locking wheel, then cutting the excess string off, and then quickly tuning to pitch. A real quick design to get you up and running. Using this PRS as an example, you'll see some guitars that have little mini switches. Now remember when I mentioned before with the other guitars where I get to split the coils, these switches are, you'll find on most guitars that have these little mini switches, are essentially doing that same idea. These switches split the coils, so with one down, it's both coils, both of the humbucking pickup works, and by moving it up, it splits the coil, so you get that split coil sound, as they call it. Now, in other guitars, like say for example, this Les Paul, this was wired to do that split coil sound. However, the way the coils are split is by popping the knob, and that's how this was wired. You get what they call a push-pull pot, which allows you to split the coils quickly. Finally, I'd be remiss not talking about, which I said about locking tremolos. And as you can see here, this is an EVH guitar with humbucking pickups, a single volume, a single tone, a three-way selector to select the pickups. There is no coil tapping or coil splitting in this particular guitar. But what makes this guitar distinct, outside of, again, another bolt-on design, is this guitar comes with a locking tremolo system. Now, many players like Eddie Van Halen employed a locking tremolo system to keep your guitar in tune, especially if you like to dive bomb or be very aggressive with the tremolo. So as I mentioned before, a tremolo allows you to what we call dive bomb the strings on these particular guitars. And you can see with this type of tremolo system, I brought the strings to slack and then I bring it back and the guitar is still in pitch. The guitar still remains in tune. Now, the way this particular guitar works is you'll notice the strings are cut, their ball end is cut off, and then threaded into these little blocks where you tighten the Allen wrench on this particular guitar to tighten this one end of it, and then you thread the string to the second part where the nut is located, where double locks here, and then you thread the Allen key to clamp down on the string, which essentially locks it on this side. So basically you're getting two ends that are locked into place after you've tuned the guitar to pitch. Then you lock the strings down. And usually when you lock it down, sometimes the strings tend to fluctuate and go slightly out of tune. And with that, because of the design, up here are these little wheels, and these are the fine tuners. So basically you're allowed to sort of move the strings sort of like tuners up here, but now you get to fine tune it over here because you've basically locked everything down. And that's really the beauty of a double locking tremolo design. There are other double locking tremolo designs out there. I urge you to check them all out. But one thing to keep in mind about a double locking tremolo is, of course, it takes a little bit more to change strings. And once you're locked in, you don't have much movement. The double locking design is nice because it keeps everything in tune. So there you have it. Those are the parts of a guitar. And now that you know what most of these guitars do and what they sound like, now you go out and check these kind of guitars out and see which one speaks to you. That's it. I'm Paul from Guitar World, and keep on playing, and hopefully I'll see you on stage. Till next time.